Okay, we are live on YouTube, so whenever you guys want to start.
Great, thank you very much. I would like to call to order the February 7th, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Traffic and Transportation Committee. And thank everyone for joining in and ask that we begin with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay, first order of business is approval of minutes from January 23rd, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval. Go ahead.
And second?
Second.
Any discussion, additions, corrections? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our bike share program update, Mr. Somerville and Lime team. I'll hand it over to Mr. Somerville briefly, and then I think we've talked to Lime a little bit about this. We'll give you about 10 minutes to give us an update, if that's okay with you. Mr. Somerville.
Yes, thank you, sir. Real quick, just wanted to kick off the Lime presentation. I guess it was maybe a month ago now. Lime did a little presentation for me, which I thought was great, and I wanted to get in front of the committee so y'all can see what has been done, the progress that has been made, and go from there. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to the Lime team.
All right, who's going to take the lead here?
I will take the lead. The slides are going up as we speak.
Great.
So I'm aware we have 10 minutes. So we're going to cruise through this. So if you want to have any questions, just let us know. Next slide, please. First of all, we want to thank the city of Charleston. We're loving it here. We're really finding some amazing things in our data too as well. So we just want to say thank you. But I'm going to go over some kind of brief highlights. We've had more than 65,000 trips taken by more than 30,000 riders. And we've also had 12,204 trips that were completed during October. And that was the busiest month in Charleston, marking a 102% increase from May. For those, as a reminder, May is when we launched. And then also you'll see that that's a 65% increase from May as well. So next slide. And just if you're looking at that data, I just want to keep on both slides. In October, November, and December, we do globally see numbers go down in the Northern Hemisphere, and that has to do with weather. Go to the next slide. Positive environmental impact. This is something we really drive here at Lime. But using the data specific to Charleston, we have replaced more than 16,000 car trips and saved more than 1,500 gallons in gas. And you can see that put out there by month to month. And again, you can see the numbers go down just based on ridership in those winter months. The last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about parking performance. And we kind of put out a list of things that create high parking performance. Number one is using data to guide our strategy. We use our internal data to make suggestions to the city about where we can put parking corrals, communication, how we can better be a better partner. Also, signage and branding are a very important part, which we've been working with the city on implementing, and you've probably seen some new signs up. Rider communication, which we'll show you here in a minute, but we've also increased our rider communication. In-app messaging is one of the best things that we can do, so people will receive reminding people that it is mandatory parking and to park into a corral. The other thing that we did is some technological enhancements. In the beginning, in August, we did what was called the triangulation. It's really increased the performance. It's allowed us to use all of our technological arms to really kind of make sure that that parking performance increases. We've also added additional team members into Charleston because Charleston's important. We want to make sure that we're getting that parking performance as well as that enhanced and exceptional program in general. And then we have also increased parking pins in Charleston. So next slide. Here's how we kind of have measured. Number one, I'm going to start with the best highlight. So parking compliance has improved based on our data from 83.7 in August to 94.8 in December. So how we got there. Number one, rider communication. The last time we talked in August, we've really done a tremendous job of pushing out rider communications to the users. We've also done those tech improvements that we talked about. We've added some more parking pins / corrals. We've added new team members, much more attention onto the program. And what it didn't include, which is kind of exciting in the sense because we still have a couple good things that we can do. And one is which is creating new parking infrastructure for 2023. And Adriana is going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing with the city and with the partner to do that. As well as we're having new branding and signage that is coming up as well. So that will help even drive that number further. And then this is just some general communications that you've seen come in app. We've done a lot around safety. Safety is very important to us. So when we talk about parking performance, we also try to tie that to safety to remind people to be safe. So you'll see the little reminders that come out or the sorry, but you can't park here. And you'll see the little parking pin reminders. This is some general stuff. Next slide. And then here's just, this is the last line, I'm going to pass it over. This is kind of talking about parking infrastructure. One of the things we've talked about a lot with Robbie and the team is that we know that when somebody is riding a device and there's mandatory parking, that having enough corrals really helps increase that parking performance. People may abandon their vehicles potentially because there isn't a parking corral near them. And we really want to enhance that rider experience as well as be really try to increase that performance. So one of the things we've talked about is increasing that. As you can see, what we found in Charleston is that there is a little bit of square mileage. There is too few parking places per square few mile. So what we're trying to do with working in the city and the partner is really kind of dig into where we can put more parking pins and parking corrals to, again, make that even that number in the 90s, get as close as we can to parking performance perfection. And those are just some comparisons of other cities. So Adriana, all yours.
Sorry about that. So this is what we're aiming to, and it is creating a reliable network. So we have been looking into our data and we observe where our riders want to begin their trips, where they want to end. What we're trying to do here is to connect the community to businesses, also give an opportunity to other persons to explore our city and get like the best experience they possibly can. We understand that we're also very important in terms of transportation. So we'll look at the areas that require additional services in terms of time, or maybe they're too far away from stations. So these are some of the considerations that we're having. We're trying to get the best experience possible for the riders so that they really see in the bike sharing program a potential, a reliable way to move around Charleston so that we can be a bit more sustainable. So like Tricia mentioned, we're trying to get more stations. So we're aiming for 120 or somewhere around 20 stations per square mile here in Charleston. And we have also been working with some other institutions to come together with a design that it's pleasing for the eye, but it also works for the program that we're running here. So we're designing together the corrals, and we're considering all sorts of things. So locations, materials, signage, size of the fleet. So we have been discussing what are some elements that we should consider if it is visible in the daytime, but also at nighttime, but also that they're not in the way, that they're good with pedestrians, and that they bring a little bit more of a road safety element to the city. So we have been proposing horizontal and vertical signage. It is still in the discussion. We're working together with this group, and I think we will get to something that allows us to give the parking performance that we need, and also that it is a good looking design. Other important alliances that we have been building throughout the past months are with some NGOs on the one side, but also with other governmental institutions. And we have also been working with educational institutions. So right now it's only Culture Charleston there, but we're also working with other that will be coming up soon. So for Lime, it is very important to be engaged with the community, and we have been doing this by supporting some events that are already in place. So for instance, the Low Below event by MUSC, but also some other events that we have created on our own. So some Q&A sessions, some demo rides, and we team up with some other NGOs to create the Equitable Mobility Meetup, which is more of an opportunity to improve the skills of citizens in general, and to for them to ask questions and just to find a cycling community where they can feel safe and when they know that they have answers to their questions or they get some support. So these are a few of the updates that we wanted to share with you all. I have no idea.
Okay, great. Thank you. For those on the call, Mayor or Councilmember Gregg, any questions for any of the Lime team about where we are or where we're headed?
No question.
Yes, sir, Mayor Tecklenburg.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that presentation. It seems like the parking issue has been greatly resolved thanks to y'all's efforts. I have been thinking again about West Ashley, I know you want to get better coverage on the peninsula, and I'm not thinking like everywhere, but just the Greenway primarily, and we're going to have a better connection soon with the bikeway. So even if we just serve those two kind of main bicycle corridors, I think would be a good thing. And you could do like 3 stations on the Greenway, for example, one behind South Windermere Shopping Center, one at the Charleston Tennis Center, and then one further out, and kind of cover the whole thing, you know, one on each end and one in the middle. And even if you just tried it on a trial basis, you know, to see what kind of usage you got for a few, through next summer, what do y'all think about that?
Mr. Mayor,
Tricia.
Mr. Chairman, this is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I miss? I'll just go. So the answer is we will, you know, we're very much in considering piloting. I think it's a really great idea. One of the ways that we learn a lot about the city that we're in is really kind of understanding through the pilot process. We've got some good data that we can use to make suggestions for that, but we're obviously open to all of that. You know, Charleston is we really love this market. This is great. There's a lot of things that we've learned, but also we've seen a great amount of usership, and we want to expand that accessibility where there is need, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, to echo the mayor's sentiment, I think there's plenty of foot traffic, bike traffic, and general traffic along that corridor to make it a worthy business endeavor and to bring and share this program in West Ashley as we're about to kick off soon, not just the process of designing, but designing and building the West Ashley connection bike ped bridge. And so having presence over there in advance of that construction beginning, I think will be good for everybody, and we'll get people used to using your product and the process of, you know, using bike share. So if we can do it, let's get it going.
Sure.
And then Councilmember Parker is over the phone and was trying to get something through.
Oh, great. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can y'all hear me?
We can barely, so please speak up.
How about now?
Better.
I'm sorry,
Now-
y'all. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you better there.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation from Lime. I am really interested. I think I told you before, I know that Charleston is going to be the big pilot program, but I do second what the mayor says. You know, I represent James Island, and I would love an opportunity to speak with you guys about some things over on James Island whenever you have a chance. If you can shoot me an email.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
And just, it doesn't show up, but that's Councilmember Parker.
Thank you.
She's Charleston City
I
Council
apologize.
District, Charleston City Council District 12.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Right, thank you. Mayor, again.
One more question, and there's maybe a technicality or a definition, but you know, we don't allow motorized vehicles on the Greenway, and I know it's not much of a motor on these e-bikes, but I guess the thought occurs to me. I wanted to ask the question: in other places and all, is the e-bike considered a motorized vehicle at all, or does it depend on the amount of power that can be supplied, or how does that work? What's y'all's experience with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these are class 1 e-bikes. It's the lowest class. So for the most part, most governmental properties and greenways and pathways, whether it's the national parks or city run facilities, municipal run facilities, class 1 is usually allowed on these. Class 3, which is a higher powered battery and motor that goes faster, is sometimes not allowed, but class 1, almost without exception, is allowed on all the greenways and pathways.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we may have to go back and look at our ordinance to see if we define motorized vehicle, and if we don't, go ahead and do it in advance so we have the legislative framework in place to allow this on the greenway.
You took that thought right out of my head. That's right.
Every now and then. All right. Any other questions? Councilmember Greg, you've been quiet up there. Any questions for the Lime team?
Nope. Thank you for the presentation. Very informative.
Great. If you don't mind and indulge me just for a second. And by the way, I wanted to thank you for allowing me and Mr. Somerville to spend some time with you a couple of weeks ago. I just a couple follow-ups, please. One is on the branding and the bike design. How are we doing on getting that going, making sure that we've got the coloring right and the Charleston Spokes name out there? Are we moving along with that?
We are actually, our branding design team, our global team has been working on it. And I think we have a meeting on Thursday with our kind of light team with the city as well as MUSC Health. I think we're going to present those as a first draft to see what the thoughts are, but I'm pretty excited about them. But yes, we are moving forward and excited to showcase this to you guys.
Great, thanks. And then the second follow-up, and we talked about this last time too, but again, it's very much on my mind and has been brought up since we met. And that is the issue and the challenges we have with bike share on the sidewalks, particularly on the peninsula of Charleston, and particularly in areas where the road itself is not particularly well suited for bike traffic, that being our cobblestone streets. East of East Bay Street, and most particularly, we talked a little bit about perhaps some geofencing or some signage, but I will just tell you, the streets we talked about to the east of East Bay Street are still experiencing some challenges with bike share line bikes on the sidewalks, and that creates some hazards. So I'd really like us to be able to address that. And I think they're probably listening in today on this, so it's still on our minds.
Yeah, no, great. We took your feedback. I think the team and I, we had a conversation about it, and I think we can get back to Robbie and you about what we can do to come up with a solution on that. But yes, we heard you, and we completely understand what you're talking about.
Okay, well, thank you. If we can sort of address that sooner rather than later, that would be great.
Perfect.
Thank
Will
you.
do.
All right. Any other questions for any member of the committee from Team Lime? If not, thank you all very much for spending some time with us today, for the hard work that you've been doing in Charleston. We've come a long way, and I think it's a program that's been very popular. I just walked from my house to my office and was passed by a number of Lime bikes on the way, which reminded me I should be hopping on one. But anyway, we'll look forward to talking with you all and seeing both sort of integration of West Ashley and James Island if possible, and making some of the design changes that we talked about. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you for your partnership. Have a good evening, guys.
All right, you too. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is pedicab 6 decal discussion. Mr. Somerville.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this item came before the committee back in August of last year, August of 2022, to discuss the issuance of 6 additional nighttime pedicab decals. At that time, there was some concern with the tourism management plan and the King Street traffic detail that's underway, as well as other things that's taking place within the city. So by the motion from Councilmember Gregg, it was asked to be, deferred for 6 months and come back to this committee to discuss how we should proceed forward with the additional 6 decals. So that's why that agenda item is on, because February makes the 6th month. And so I have it back before the committee for discussion.
Okay, any member of the committee have any questions or any discussion items for Mr. Somerville or for the committee? Councilmember Gregg.
I'd like to go ahead and issue these decals. I think we've heard from the business community and I can't see that issuing 6 more decals is going to create a great impediment. It seems like there's the demand for it. You know, I'm a believer in the free market economy. If these guys want to risk their capital to go start a pedicab business, then more power to them. And if we have too many pedicabs, then the market will tell us that we have too many pedicabs, and there will be fewer riders, and some of them will cease to exist. So I think we should proceed. It seems like right now we are stifling competition in the market. So I'm in favor of going ahead and issuing these decals.
Thank you. Any other comments from anybody on the committee? Yes, sir, Mayor Tecklenburg.
So thank you. And let me ask a question first, and then I'd like to make a comment. So Dan Riccio, I see his face pop up, and I wasn't able to make that tourism review. I think it was in November when I was out of town. Did this topic come up at all? Has there been any discussion in the review of the tourism plan or ordinance about the number of pedicabs?
No, sir. Actually, the plan only mentions the pedicabs to a degree of touring, more so than any other issues. It was mentioned in a lot of the meetings during the planning stages about the problems with pedicabs, and we were tasked with the enforcement of the pedicabs concerning touring. However, we interact with them on a daily basis, and based on what my officers inform me and what I have noticed when I'm out and about, where we are at with the capacity we're at with pedicabs, in my opinion and my assessment, we've noticed that the parking spaces for these pedicabs are at its capacity. And that creates issues with these pedicabs parking on dangerous corners and things of that nature. So we do interact with them regarding the safety issues when the officers are out there. Personally, in my opinion, I think that there has been no concern from the tourism management side, but on the safety side and the location of parking spaces, if we added additional, it would require adding additional parking areas for these pedicabs, which would then take away from vehicle parking spaces to accommodate that. But other than that, it hasn't been a major issue regarding the management plan itself.
So maybe this is more for Robbie. Have there, other than that one horrible accident we had, which was of course the fault of if I remember correctly, a intoxicated driver, have there been other accidents, incidents, safety related?
I'm not aware of any other incidents that has taken place except for that one that you mentioned.
Right.
You haven't heard anything else.
So Mr. Chairman, respectfully, I just think we ought to go one way or the other. I don't really feel strongly about issuing the 6 additional tags, but you know, we changed the number officially, what, a year or more ago, and we raised this expectation, of course, about issuing the 6 additional tags, and then we had a little situation with the procurement and decided not to go forward with them, and then we raised the issue. Well, let's wait and see what the downtown plan, tourism plan, all these things say. It doesn't sound to me like the 6 tags are going to be an impact one way or the other. So I would just assume either approve them or amend the ordinance and put the number back where it was, and don't have the expectation out there that we might any day or any month put another RFP out for the 6 tags. It's kind of like, let's either approve them and go forward, or either set the number back to where it was and move on from this issue. That's kind of where I'm at.
Fair comment. Councilmember Parker, any comment or question about this? I know that she's traveling. So I might just add very briefly, because this is just for discussion purposes only. I might have been the author of some of this confusion and dilemma in that when we did amend the ordinance, we added those 6 tags. Since then, a few things have happened, and I would just kind of like to point them out to the committee. Well, one of the things that didn't happen, and we probably got out ahead of ourselves, is contrary to some thought, there was no general call to add the number of pedicabs on the street from the hospitality industry, from the tourism industry itself. It seemed at the time perhaps a good idea. But since then, we've had some challenges, as you know, and particularly in the King Street corridor, which at night, particularly Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, when the most decals are allowed and the most pedicabs are allowed out there, we've actually reduced the area and space that is available for transit for not just pedicabs, but for all vehicles. And I would like, if we're going to go and amend this ordinance, to hear from the police department before we do that, Mr. Mayor. The other thing is I would point out is, although we haven't completed the task yet, we are very much in the process of completing the task of rethinking the peninsula plan. And as I'm not sure if the committee is aware, but Mr. Mayor, you are, as we went through the RFP for the team to be our consultants on the peninsula plan, we actually came back to you and to city council to ask for more monies to study traffic and transportation patterns on the peninsula. And that was approved, and that is in process. So it's not just pedicabs, it's all forms of mobility on the peninsula we're going to be looking at. And before we start adding more congestion out there, I think we really ought to look at our traffic patterns. I kind of, like you, agree. I mean, in terms of where this all goes, I'm a little bit agnostic, but I would like to sort of get some input from the team that's studying mobility patterns on the city, at the city level, on the peninsula, and from the police department. I'd also like to point out, on the competition side, our current ordinance doesn't allow monopoly on these medallions. And if we go back out to bid, the teams that are out there that are already operating have every opportunity to bid for them too. So I don't think we're stifling competition. I think our first and most important obligation here at Traffic and Transportation is to make sure that our streets are operating in a safe manner. And so before we go put more congestion, more obstacles out there, I think we just need to, with our eyes wide open. So this is for discussion purposes only. Our next TNT meeting is a month from now. To the extent that there's some input from the committee and there's a request from the chair or from legal to put this back on for a vote up or down, we can do that. I don't think we can do it today. But I think those are some of the issues that we've got out there. Any other comments or questions before we move on, and we can ask that this come back up for a vote if that's the committee's desire? I see Captain Bruder has now put his video on. So Captain Bruder, would you like to be heard?
Yes, sir. Robbie called me this morning. I got a crash course in pedicab. I didn't know what a pedicab was, but I was not aware of all the intricacies in getting this issued out and all those different types of things. You know, obviously we're starting to tow in 2 days off of King Street, and that's, I think, going to move us in the right direction down there. And obviously I'll be paying a little more attention to that. One question I had of Robbie, and maybe this is something just to keep in 21 seems like a lot of pedicabs that may be out there, but I don't know if I've ever seen that many out there that are being used. So are all of the decals that are issued, are they actually being used? I don't know if we can have any way of track that or no, but
the short answer to your question is yes, all the decals that are out there are being used, not every night, you know, supply and demand, but they are all outstanding, have been, and are out there. Yes. And on busy nights, there is a full complement of pedicabs on the streets.
Okay. Right. I mean, I would agree with everything that's been mentioned. You know, we just want to make sure, as far as, you know, looks like these pretty much exclusively are along King Street. I know they can go generally in the peninsula area, but we don't see them too far off of that business district of Market Meeting. And we certainly want to make sure that we maintain that safety down there and that they're aware. I do agree with Mr. Ricchio's comments about their parking. I don't think we have a great plan as a city of where these park when they're not being used. Luckily, they stay busy, it seems like, on Friday and Saturday nights. But there's no good plan other than just kind of hanging around and loitering in front of the businesses, which is to some degree what we're trying to deter, is people just loitering and waiting in front of the businesses. But I think it's something that we can continue to discuss and keep an eye on as we move forward.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
It's a very practical, logistical thing, and particularly since we're going to start towing this week on Upper King. Do we allow the pedicabs to go in both directions on Upper King when we have the one lane closed? I would ask that question. And secondly, I would point out that if we're going to start towing, you talked about places for them to park. We're certainly going to open up some places for bikes and pedicabs to park if we so chose, because the cars are going to be gone.
We do allow two-way traffic of pedicabs in the eastern lane, north and south. Yes.
I thought so. I just wanted
that was an accommodation we made, and it's actually it's worked pretty well. I think I'll defer to Captain Bruder, but my eye tells me it's worked pretty well, and it's allowed for some mobility up along that street to keep things moving, which has been the objective from the very get-go from the police safety perspective.
Right.
So might I suggest this? Let's get this back on an agenda. I think the mayor's plan is a good one. Let's vote it up or down. However, and see if we have a full complement of the committee at our next meeting. And either we'll issue these decals or we won't. And we'll see where we go from there. Does that suit everybody?
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Captain Bruder, for chiming in on a busy afternoon. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you all later. Okay, I think I might move to defer the next conversation because I don't see Mr. O'Brien or Mr. Fountain on the call. We had a call with them this week about the city-state street maintenance discussion. There's still some more work that needs to be done to get a full report to this committee. And unless Mr. Somerville thinks there's any differently, I'd like to defer this discussion until we can get a little bit more information put together to present to the committee and ultimately to City Council.
Yes, I'm fine with the deferral.
Okay, so I'd move to defer that matter without objection. All right, next, valet parking at 88 Broad Street. Mr. Somerville and Ms. Shear from our legal department, who I see is there with the typical glow around her head. Her halo is shining brightly today.
I swear the shades are shut.
All right, Mr. Somerville, we'll let you lead off on this one.
I'm sorry, my phone keeps trying to ring, but yes, we received a request at 88 Broad Street to define a valet parking location. That's on the corner of Broad and I'll call it the northwest corner of Broad and Meeting. There's 4 locations, 4 meter spaces that we are requesting approval to be a part of the valet parking location. Yeah, that's right.
Ms. Shear, is there anything that you need to add from the legal perspective on that?
I'm available to answer any questions. This is in accordance with our statute 19-510 with the valet parking. Just making everybody aware for council to approve the new spots.
Okay, great. Any member of the committee have any question about this? I guess my one question is, this is on our agenda, Mr. Somerville, as I think discussion. I mean, is the directive you're looking for to get legal to add those 4 spaces into our valet parking program and into the ordinance so we can vote on it and it become active? Is that what we're looking to do?
I believe so.
Yes, sir.
Well, unless there's any objection from the committee, I would ask that we direct just that we ask them to add it into the ordinance, bring it back to us to vote on, because I know that space is about to become active and very active pretty quickly. So if it suits our eye, that is a good place for valet. We should get it going. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
In fact, Mr. Chairman, I just got a notice. I think they're planning on opening for business in about 2 weeks. So I would respectfully ask and would make a motion that we approve this request so that they will have the ability to valet park when they open in 2 weeks.
Okay, just make sure legally we're okay with doing that and adding on to the agenda. I would second it with the caveat, but Ms. Shear, are we okay with doing that?
Yes, council member, it would, Robbie does have the authority to at least allow the valet on a temporary basis until a proper bid can go out.
Okay, great. So we've got a motion from the mayor that I believe I'm okay to second. Any discussion or questions about this? I just have one small thing. If you go and look at the configuration of these 4 spaces, they span a few properties and extend past the property where the restaurant will be opening in front of another commercial enterprise, which, by the way, just so happens to be my former and old law office, is now another privately held but business enterprise. So I just want to make sure that we notify and get consent from that property owner, because I think that these 4 spaces will extend to in front of 92 Broad Street. And I know that the operators of Sorrel are aware of that and are reaching out to that owner now. But just, Mr. Somerville, will you just make sure we coordinate that so we don't get any questioning back from the next door neighbors?
Absolutely. You know, I've been over there as well. I'm trying to make a connection with that property owner, but you know, it appears that there's some renovations going on, but I haven't actually seen anybody there other than painters or people doing some outside construction.
That is very Charleston and polite way when you say some renovations. They got scaffolding up got the building, they're tearing it apart. There's a lot going on over there. All right. Any other questions or comments?
You know,
Mr. Mayor, was that hand up?
If you want to make the official approval just for the spaces in front of the business or property owner in question, you know, if we're making this like a permanent thing, I'd certainly would be happy to revise the motion.
I think that you'll get consent from that owner, and the 4 spaces will make flow in and out of there better. And remember, that's a pretty narrow part of Broad Street, so we want cars to pull completely off. And that 4th space really allows for ingress, egress in a more efficient and safe manner. So what I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, is we approve this on a temporary basis until we do these permanently, and we ask Mr. Somerville just to coordinate the consent of the next door neighbor and report back if there's any issue with that.
Okay. I move for a temporary approval.
Okay, and I second that. Any further discussion from any member of the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, not to belabor this topic, but a more general observation and suggestion, if I may.
Sure.
I think it's good for us to encourage businesses, restaurants, even other active businesses to valet park. They make pre-arrangements where cars can be parked and they don't have their customers looking around for parking spaces. And so it seems to me it's a activity that we want to accommodate if anybody willing to do it. You know, in our existing valet parking ordinance, if you will, was a little different model. It was, you know, putting it out for bid and that a company would valet park in certain locations in the city on demand. But it seems to me this is a little different, and one that we would want to encourage, that if any restaurant wanted to take on the responsibility of valet parking, that it's a wise thing for us to let them utilize a couple of parking spaces, and maybe there's a small fee for it, just like we charge a fee for putting a dumpster in a parking space. But to think of this as a different opportunity to encourage valet parking in the city, but to have our ordinance reflect that as well.
Any response to the mayor's comments from any member of the committee? If I might, Mr. Mayor, just really briefly, to generally agree with you, but to point up one challenge, and I agree with you. I think when we first did valet parking, it was not site-specific valet parking, and that was done in conjunction with us enacting the late night ordinances, you may recall. I think back then you were private citizen Tecklenburg, not Mayor Tecklenburg. And so that program worked well until COVID came along. I just think before we go and amend our ordinance and open it up to any operator who wants to do it, we have to consider the density of hospitality activity in any given area. And the area I'm thinking about again is Upper King Street, where you've got a lot of storefronts in a row that are restaurant, bar, hospitality entities. And if each one wants to operate a separate valet service, that could create some safety issues. So while I generally agree, and I think we all probably do with the observations you made, I think there are a few challenges in the more densely populated areas, East Bay Street, the Market, and Upper King Street coming to mind. So perhaps we can continue through Mr. Somerville's office to look at the opportunities that are out there to provide accessible valet parking safely. But I think we may have a few areas that we've got to think about just opening wide open. And again, the Sorrel is a perfect example because that is a narrow area, just not a lot of density for late night activity, right? And the four spaces really are what's needed to make it safe. And four spaces, what's four spaces, Robbie? That's 100 feet, plus or minus. If every bar and restaurant on Upper King Street needed 100 feet in front, we'd run out of space before we ran out of applicants. So I think we just need to think about that.
So again, if you don't mind piling on, North Upper King Street is a perfect example of the first model. Like you say, rather than every restaurant having their own, community valet makes more sense. I get that. And particularly now that we're going to be towing cars on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, more than ever, if you had a couple of use some of those parking spaces for community valet, makes all the sense in the world to me.
100% agree. And so I think in conjunction with what we're doing on Upper King Street and the need and want for valet services and the density on Upper King Street, we may need a hybrid model, like you pointed out, the site specific in some areas and then the community valet in other areas. And I think I like that phrase, community valet. I think that'll work out. And Mr. Somerville, I think that's consistent with generally where we are with our ordinance now anyway. We can build on that because we do have some site specific valet at hotels. Francis Marion has it, Bennett has it, Planners Inn has it. There's lots of places that have it.
That's right. Thank you.
I see Mr. Mathis tuned in. Do you have a comment?
Sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. If there's nothing else on this, I think we've already voted on the item that's before us and we've given some general direction. So we'll keep an eye on valet services going forward. Thank you. All right, next. Fairchild at River Landing Intersection Improvement Project, Daniel Island. All right, Ms. Shear and Councilmember Gregg, I think. And soon to be Councilmember Seekings up there too.
Yes, thank you. So this is a memorandum of understanding between the city and SWF Daniel Island. These are for some improvements at the corner of River Landing Drive and Fairchild Street. This is in Councilmember Gregg's district, and this is a project that I think everybody's ready to get moving. What this is obligating the city to is 50% of the funding, but with a cap of 50,000. SWF will be responsible for any funding over the 50,000. The improvements are going to include paving, grading, and striping of the intersection. You can see that as an Exhibit B attached to our agenda. The SWF has agreed to start, they'll apply for permits at the latest 60 days after the signing of the MOU and have agreed to complete the project within 1 year of receiving permits, although everybody's expecting this project to be completed much sooner.
Okay, Councilmember Gregg, anything in addition?
Would just like to thank SWF as well as city staff for getting this done. This has been a problematic interchange for some time. With that additional development, it's obviously going to get worse. So this is a great improvement for Daniel Island. Thank you all for helping us get this done.
Thank you for pushing it.
Yeah, definitely. Shows you good advocacy from a council member, gets a lot done. So thank you. I see it on our agenda just as an item. Do we need to vote on this? Is there any needs a vote?
Yes, please.
Can I have a motion?
Move for approval.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Great, thank you. And moving right along. Number 8, an ordinance to amend chapter 21 of the Code of the City of Charleston, offenses ordinance, by adding a new section 21-2, Article 1. Who's going to handle this?
I am,
name.
Chairman.
There's no name by it. No one's taking ownership. All right. The world needs
Lucky
leaders
me,
too.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
So I am handling this. On January 3rd at the TNT committee meeting, action was taken to direct staff to potentially change zoning ordinances to regulate the parking of large vehicles on commercial or on property in general. It was reported out to council at the January 10th meeting. Pursuant to those instructions, legal drafted this in consultation with zoning and police, this proposed ordinance. It does create a new ordinance in the offenses section. It regulates the parking of storage of commercial vehicles in the zoning districts of conservation, residential, office, limited business, and general zoning districts. I can screen share with you if you would like to see it on the screen, or you can just look at your packet.
I've
Preference?
got mine in front of me. Does anyone need
Okay.
to copy this in front of them? I think we've all got it.
Okay. So the commercial vehicles as defined for this ordinance are limousines, flatbeds, dump trucks, tow trucks. A lot of these are probably mean the same thing, but we're just making sure we encompass everything. Records, tandem axle trucks, cab on chassis, tractor trailers, trucks without a trailer, trailers without a truck, buses, machinery, semis, any vehicle over 20 feet in length or 7 feet in height, any vehicle more than 6 wheels or 2 axles, or any vehicle more than 14,000 pounds. Those vehicles cannot park in the predefined districts unless, and there are several exceptions that they actually can park in predefined districts. And generally I can go over each of those with you, but we do have exceptions for authorization by owner, as long as there is something in the windshield saying, giving the property owner or the property lessee's name, their contact information, the operator of the vehicle and their contact information. If they're doing business on the property, if they're permitted by the city. Again, there are several other exceptions in there. The operator cannot sleep or park overnight in those districts without written authorization, and the penalty is up to $500 or 30 days in jail. After talking with staff after this was already on the agenda, I did possibly, if this gets reported out for first reading, would like to make 2 minor adjustments. The definition section of the districts, which says as defined in Article 1 of the zoning ordinance, I would just like to remove Article 1 and just say as defined in the zoning ordinance. And then one of the exceptions to where you are allowed to park is if the vehicle is parked or stored on a lot used for residential purposes and used exclusively by the resident. Sometimes residents may bring home a work truck that is also used by other employees of the company and not exclusively by the owner. So we just want to make it clear, remove the word exclusively, that if it's their work truck, even if other people use it, they can have it on their property.
How many times did you have to rehearse that?
I have it all written out. If you couldn't see me reading it word for word.
Gotcha. All right. That's a mouthful. Any questions from the committee? I think this is a little out of order because we haven't taken a motion, but any questions from the committee before we get into a motion on this? I see Mr. Riccio chimed in. Would you like to weigh in on this, or are you just an interested bystander?
Well, I'm interested, but I'll stand by to see what everybody else has to say first.
Okay. All right, well, I guess the first things, do we have a motion on this?
Move for approval.
Can we get a second, at least for discussion purposes? Huh, I'm not sure I can can I second it?
Second.
We got a second for Councilmember Parker. Thank you. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Now let's have some discussion about this. Who's got what to say? Anybody?
Well, I got a quick question. I mean, this is really coming out of Councilman Shade's concern on the Sumar Street property, correct?
Right.
Have we seen this tractor trailer issue in any other parts of the city?
I can chime in on that if you'd like.
That'd be great.
I can tell you, based on my experience with this, my strong opinion professionally is that this is an isolated issue based on the request from the councilman in the area of the Ashley Plaza Mall, or Ashley Landing Mall is what they refer to it. I really strongly feel that our current ordinances of non-consensual tows effectively address this issue throughout the entire city. We don't generate a lot of complaints. We work closely with parking enforcement because there are times we are the instrument that notifies the owner of a property. And in this case, we did the same thing at the request of Councilman Shahid with the old Captain D's and the old BP little station on the north side of the Publix. There were tractor trailers parking there. So what we did is reached out to the property manager. They have since contracted with I think they're called, let me think, JB's Towing, who are specializing in the big rigs. There are about 10 signs posted there now. They, in my opinion, has corrected the issue with this tractor trailers that were parking there overnight. They actually, one did park there today after signage, and the tow truck company responded. And we found out, we learned interestingly, that the tow truck company has a database that they are able to run the ID number on the trailer, and it gives them all the contact information for the owner. The owner was there in 15 minutes and hauled it away. But the only area we've ever really dealt with this is right there in that corridor. So right now, in my opinion, I think having a new ordinance implemented for that is probably redundant with the ordinance that we have now, with these property owners choosing to contract with these towing companies for non-consensual tows. And you see it downtown a lot, the parking lots, and same type of issue. So I'm just, dealing with this on quite a long-term basis over the years. It's really just that corridor that we've been having issues with. And in my opinion, we've resolved those issues.
Any other questions or comments? So I might just add, the old adage that you learn early on in your days as a law student or a young lawyer is a law is only as good as its exceptions. And this one is a 20-word law with exceptions that are a full page single space with exceptions, which I think then makes it an enforcement nightmare for our team out there on the street. I know this is something that has agitated Councilmember Shade, and I was hoping he would have tuned in for this meeting, but I understand that he's got a busy afternoon. What I might do is ask that we defer this over and allow Councilmember Shade to weigh in and see if we can maybe refine it a little bit, because this is something that he asked for, and I would like to get his comment before we vote on it, which I suspect won't go so well for the ordinance today, but maybe we can refine it, get some input from him, and bring it back at our next meeting if that suits everybody. So I'd move to defer this.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any discussion on the motion to defer? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The ayes have it. There's no other matter left on our agenda, and we've gone almost exactly an hour or 57 minutes in, and it's the biggest agenda we've had at T&T for a while. Is there any other comment from any member of the committee before we run up to an hour and the screen turns off? I have one thing. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
So, Mr. Chairman, on that last matter, it seems to me reading this that all these exceptions are accommodating, legitimate bona fide business activities in the city of Charleston. And as I was reading them, and staff has been very thoughtful to include all kinds of possibilities. And I'm not an attorney like you. Attorneys seem to really think of all these scenarios where anything might happen. But in the real world and in the business world of people making deliveries, taking deliveries, missed deliveries, moving trucks, even people moving from their home, they have to rent a truck. I mean, there's just all kinds of situations out there that I don't know that we can anticipate all of them, and that are legitimate, that you need a truck, a delivery needs to be made, you need to move your furniture, whatever. So I just, I understand the concern over that area that Dan mentioned, and I think that's been addressed. But I just am a little concerned that we're getting pretty restrictive here on the business side, and those situations where citizens need to move things and utilize trucks. So, they have this expression, if you got it, it came on a truck, right? So I'm certainly opposed to tractor trailers being randomly parked in our city. I served now 7 years as mayor, and I don't hear every complaint in the city. I hear most of them. Nobody's complained to me other than the Sumar Street and right across the street situation. So anyway, I'm concerned we put in a law that's hard to enforce and really contrary to getting business done and getting deliveries done in our city.
Hence the exceptions and the rule observation. I agree. I'll get with Councilmember Shade, let him know we deferred this, talk about it, get with legal, and if there is an issue out there we need to address through an ordinance, let's get that issue addressed rather than, I think, sort of throwing this really wide net that's, I think, literally impossible for Mr. Riccio and his team to get out there and enforce. So we'll work through this. And I think we've already voted, have we not?
We did.
One more thing really quickly before time runs out. So kudos to Ms. Jennifer Cook for getting out ahead of us at the beginning of the year and setting committee schedules for the entire year. One of the committees that got scheduled out was Traffic and Transportation. And if you notice from those schedules, they're on off Tuesdays, not on City Council Tuesdays. And what I would propose and ask that you all consent to is we adjust the T&T schedule to be held on the first Tuesday of City Council meetings for the rest of the year at 3:30. We can do it hybrid, but if we get back to in person, which I'd love to do, it will allow for ease of scheduling, because we'll be heading for City Council anyway, and you won't have to set your schedules on weeks where we are not meeting for any purpose, including during the summer when we only have one meeting in June, July, and August. So I've talked to Ms. Cook about this, and she's certainly amenable. She has the staff that's ready to go and do it. I think it's certainly more convenient for each member of this committee to have this committee meeting in conjunction with other committees on a day we're otherwise engaged and not on a separate day. So unless there's any objection, I'd like to adjust to have our schedule out for the first City Council Tuesday of every month going forward for the rest of the year at 3:30.
Do we need to vote on this?
No, I don't think so. But if you have any strong objection, and we can adjust as we go along, we're only scheduled to meet once a month anyway. But I just think for standard setting, it just makes everybody's life easier, including, by the way, the clerk's office for staffing. Mayor, I see you looking at your calendar and your schedule. So if there's any problem with that, just please let me know.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, unless there's anything to come before this Traffic and Transportation Committee, I think we actually did it in 59 minutes because we started 2 minutes late. So I'm going to call us adjourned and say we've met our time schedule. Thank everybody for your hard work, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.